Welcome to Tech Startup Stories, hosted by Natalie Binns. This is the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the B2B startup world.
Hi, I'm Natalie Binns, and after many years as a marketing leader in the B2B SaaS industry, I set up Hey Gabby to support startups and scale-ups with their go-to-market and growth needs. I work with so many great founders, and that's led me to want to hear their stories and share them with others. And that's why I set up this podcast. So let's get into season 2. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's podcast. This is the first episode of season 2, and I'm very excited to welcome CEO and co-founder of Inicio AI, Rachel Curtis. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So you've been around a little while. I know that you have been in the finance industry for a number of years. Tell me a little bit about how you moved from that industry into running and building an AI company.
So 30 years in financial services, which good face for you, more like gentler cold enough, obviously. So mostly operations, customer marketing type roles. So I was in that customer facing, and my last role was part of the team that founded one of the challenger banks, and I was there for 10 years. And the last role I was doing there was digital transformation. Came across, this was about 5 years ago. So I was introduced to new sort of chatbot technology, which 5 years ago, if we all cast our minds back, we were all a little bit grumpy about chatbots because they were a little bit rubbish. A lot of the banks were trying to use them and they weren't going that well. So I was a little bit negative and sort of, you're not putting that near my customers type attitude at that point. But I could see that the technology was moving on. I could see, this was all pre-ChatGPT, that kind of stuff. But I could see it was starting to improve. But I wasn't sure about the use cases. I think as consumers, we want a really slick digital process where we can self-serve. And when that falls over, I want a human that answers my question. I don't want to have to try and figure out from your chatbot where the answer is. So my view was, even if chatbots improve, you've got to find a use case of a consumer group who want to deal with a non-human. And I wasn't sure what that use case was. And then within about a week of seeing that technology, one of my colleagues that I was working on the project with was in London one night and unfortunately ended up having to intervene when a heavily pregnant lady was trying to take her own life because she was in debt. And the challenge for that lady was she got debts to a number of companies and they were all asking her to fill in an income and expenditure form, which is a long financial form that you have to fill in if you're in debt so that the company you owe money to can work out whether you can pay something, nothing. How does it work? How do they help you? And for that lady, she'd been sent digital forms and paper forms and wasn't very good with her money, so couldn't fill them in on her own. She tried ringing a call center of one of the companies she owed money to, but ended up in a very sort of embarrassing phone call of a young call center agent asking her, all of her financial situation, what she was spending her money on. And she ended up abandoning that phone call and therefore feeling like she'd got no way forwards. And that was where the two things kind of dropped together that, okay, you've got technology that will support customers that want help, not from a human. And here is a group of customers who need some help, but are too embarrassed to get it from a human. So that's sort of where the idea for Inicio was born. And I think it was that very powerful founding story that kind of hooked me into getting involved in the Inicio journey.
Wow, what a journey. And what an interesting way to start. And I'm hoping that lady got the help she needed. It sounds like your colleague was there at the right time. So with that, going from having this incredible idea, what was the process that you went through to kind of get Inicio off the ground?
So with my sort of customer background, we started with research. So we got a group of customers that were struggling financially, that particularly with this sort of income and expenditure task. And we got them to talk about what the challenges were, where they needed help, that kind of thing. So we got that real insight into the different segments and customer needs in kind of this space. And then we built a prototype of the product, and one of the team, they knew a contact who'd got a very small debt book and they agreed to pilot the product. So we sent that out to their customers, and they sent it to a group of customers that had been unresponsive for sort of up to 18 months. So a very sort of aged debt book that was really not communicating with the company. And they had instantly 30% of that base get in touch, complete an income and expenditure form, set up payment plans, make payments. So it kind of illustrated that the need was real. There were customers that really did want to engage to solve the problem, but they didn't have that mechanism to make that contact with that organisation because they couldn't self-serve and they wouldn't speak to somebody over the phone. So it kind of showed us that that need was there. So that was the next step. We then went away and did some more sort of building out of the product, some more research, and then we launched properly really in the summer of 2023. One of our early clients was Northumbrian Water. And again, they got a brilliant response rate overnight. They went from 10% of their customers engaging with them to I think it was 44%, because filling in an income and expenditure form, 84% of them were doing it completely self-serve without any support. So again, it sort of really transformed the lives of those consumers to get into a payment plan with the water company. We also do things like within the form, we look for if customers are missing out on any benefits or as if there's any cost savings they can make as well. So we're trying to help them more broadly than just do the income and expenditure. Let's look at your budget and see if we can help your financial situation.
It must feel good to be helping people as well as companies at the same time. I know you're a B2B organization, but the ultimate goal is to help the individual, the kind of the person at the end of the line that is at the end of their tether as well.
Yeah, I think I'm really fortunate in the position I'm in because I have that, we're really helping consumers that are struggling. So I get that really nice social aspect of it. And equally, we go into companies and we've seen, consistently our clients are seeing 50% of their agent time freed up so that they can help more vulnerable customers or other things that they need to be doing. We see customers make better payment plans. They stick to those payment plans. So the customer's in a better situation because they're getting out of debt. And the business is in a better situation because they're able to kind of service that debt and get a better outcome. So yeah, I am super fortunate that it's a very commercially viable product, which makes a big difference to our clients, and therefore it's easy to sell. And all the time we're doing that really great stuff for end consumers as well.
And so you sort of said one of your first customers was a water company. You come from banking, which is where your original thought process and use case came from. How have you defined your ideal customer profile, your main kind of target audience?
Yeah, this is one we've had quite a lot of debate with investors on. So our obviously our end consumer is a consumer that's in debt, typically is where we started from. Actually, what's interesting now is we're just expanding into new lending cases because with regulation changing, where companies are lending money, they have obligations to really check affordability in a very thorough way. And our product works exactly the same at that front end. It helps the consumer complete a really good quality budget. There's sort of check and challenge in there, and kind of they add notes and kind of make it really clear. So it's starting to expand out from a consumer end customer use case out of debt into new lending. From an ideal customer profile point of view, we kind of got challenged, as I say early on, because we operate with water companies, banks, credit unions, debt advice, debt collection, insurance. We've got a very diverse customer group, and investors challenged us early on with that and sort of like, you're not focused enough kind of thing. But my argument would be we're specialists in the very niche solution of helping consumers complete an income and expenditure form. And my income and expenditure form is exactly the same answer, whether I need to provide it because I've got a credit card debt or I'm behind on my water bill or I've not paid my TV license or I've been overpaid benefits. It doesn't matter. It's exactly the same answer. My affordability position is the same. Therefore, we kind of made the case with investors that it's the same solution that applies across all of those industries. And we've seen, so one of our water company implementations is exactly the same configuration and delivery as one of our debt collection agencies, yet another one of our debt collection agencies has a different process and is implemented completely differently. So I would argue we've got a very flexible product. Everything's built to be configurable. We can deploy it across those different organizations and it's okay. But that was definitely a debate up front. And I think a lot of founders face those challenges early on of, do I really focus on a sector? If we just focused on the water sector, we probably wouldn't be here today because it's slow moving, there's challenges. Therefore, we had to kind of diversify, I guess.
So you mentioned investors, and obviously you've been on quite a journey. You started out, in 2021. So talk me through that investor journey.
Yeah, so at the start, we bootstrapped. You typically do sort of friends, family, and contacts, kind of put in early SCIS sort of money in and then some EIS. We then followed a very painful funding journey, I would say. I guess it was one of the worst fundraising periods. I'm a female. We're not very good at fundraising, apparently, or we're very good at it, but not very successful, however you look at it. So it's challenging on that basis. It's tech. We were in AI. AI had got a lot of excitement around it, but not necessarily funds being deployed in that early period because there was a lot of sort of, what is this? Is it going to work? I think it's different now, I think, but back then it was still very early days. So we did sort of angel funding in a painful way of we pretty much took funding in almost every month for a couple of years, just very much hand to mouth, kind of the next thing, because we couldn't unlock that sort of bigger tranche really. And we were sort of in this thing that I hear from a lot of founders of, you get stuck in that you need traction to unlock funding and you need funding to unlock traction. And it's like, how do you sort of break that cycle? So it becomes, I guess, very scrappy early on in terms of, right, what are my proof points? How can I demonstrate traction? I'm not going to go and win a big tier one bank contract, which is what everybody would like, but how can I demonstrate that, we've got that product market fit? So we were very sort of innovative in terms of relationships that we built. We partnered with some companies as well and tried to show that traction to get funding unlocked. We did it was just over $1 million pre-seed in 2022, 23. And then we closed just under 3 million seed round in March this year. So once we got to those stages and you can get the bigger chunks of cash in, obviously it's easier, then you've got runway. But that early period was super scrappy and painful, I guess. And I'm super grateful to our angels that funded us in the early days because they took the biggest risk. They were funding a few months out, not, VCs want you to have sort of 18 months when they're funded. It was like, well, yeah, I can get you to, a 2 months time type thing with the angel money. So those guys taking the risk early on makes a big difference to young companies.
I think your comments on we're not particularly good at getting funding, I don't think that's true. I mean, there's so much to be said about how challenging it is as a female founder. And many of our guests, we've got quite a few ladies joining us in season 2, have been through the exact same journey. So I really don't think it's you. Yeah, we can always build a better pitch deck, present the story in a better way. But it is challenging to get that. And I think there more funds are available when you prove the concept, but proving the concept is becoming harder. And so I'm really pleased that you managed to get that early funding from those angels. What's your plan moving forward in terms of investment? You've just had your kind of seed round, which is a great growth round, I'm sure. What are your future plans?
Yeah, so we will go to Series A probably next summer. It's kind of, we've got a few different options at the minute as to which way we go for it. But yeah, it looks like probably a next summer kind of raise. And we're already having those conversations because I guess what I've learned is it's much nicer to have a conversation when you've got lots of cash in the bank because it's much easier and you can start to build those relationships. And I guess everything everybody said to me in our early fundraising journey of it's about relationships and all that kind of stuff. But when you're starting from scratch, how do you get started on that? I think is the really early founder challenge. But now for me, people want to talk to me, people come to me to have those conversations. So it's just much easier from that. I'm sure our Series A won't be, over in 5 minutes. It's still going to be challenging, but it's different kind of challenging because you've got that track record and credibility that really helps. But yeah, we've already, I don't think you're ever not fundraising, even when you've got cash in the bank, because you're kind of planning for the next stage of it.
Yeah, it's like business development. You're never going to stop, even if you've got customers to onboard. So with the team that you've got, I know that in the early days you're extremely scrappy, as you said, and coming from that commercial background yourself, I'm sure you were wearing many hats on sales and marketing and business development and partnerships and all of that kind of stuff. How has your role evolved over time? You've been running the business now for coming up to 5 years. How has it evolved?
I guess it's more enjoyable now. I've got a really great team around me, and what I've been able to do, I was really lucky that we got a place on the Morgan Stanley Inclusive Ventures Lab in 2023. And that was a phenomenal program. I would recommend that to any founders that kind of fall into that category. That was such an amazing amount of support. And one of the things the team there did with me, and I remember it's there, we got the whiteboard and we wrote down everything I do then, and then we wrote down everything I'm good at and want to do. And they helped me kind of plan, well, what is my journey to this? What team do I need around me to kind of do the things that either I don't enjoy or are not my natural talents? And that's what I've been able to build, really, sort of bringing in people to do various sort of functions. And they're just so much better at those things. Like you say, in the early days, you end up doing at best an average job of everything, and then you bring people in and you watch them go, and it's like, oh my goodness, it just adds so much value to the organization. So I'm really enjoying that part now, as we've just grown our commercial team with two really experienced, powerful individuals, and I'm humbled that they want to join, Inicio, that we've managed to create a brand and a product that they're really excited about, because these guys could go and get huge jobs in huge companies doing these things, but they really believe in our mission and what we're trying to build. So yeah, I guess it's just enabled me now to focus on where I get my energy and where I'm sort of really enjoying doing those elements.
We often talk on this podcast about balance, work-life balance, how you balance, thinking time, family time. How have you managed to navigate that in building this business?
I'm not entirely sure I have. I'm not going to sit here and give this wonderful story of, oh, you can have it all. You have to make sacrifices. I think I'm lucky. My son is actually he's 21 in a few weeks, which is terribly scary, but therefore self-sufficient and very supportive and helpful around the home. So I have a household that kind of supports me and understands when I'm away and I'm traveling. And I've seen fellow founders do this with young children, and hats off to them. I just think that's an incredible amount of effort to do both. But yeah, I think I love what I do and I enjoy what I do, and I get to do some of the side kind of socializing through some of the work stuff as well. So I get that kind of mix of activities. But yeah, I have an understandable household that backs me up, I guess.
Well, that's good. And it sounds like you're getting some balance, even if it's not 50-50 or somewhere near, giving you the balance that you need. So, if you could go back and speak to your former self at the beginning of this journey, when you kind of set out with this idea, what advice would you give yourself in sort of early 2021?
I guess just get proof points of the product. I think I probably wasted time having funding conversations before we were ready for them. And it's really difficult because you've got to get the funding, but you're not going to get the funding without the traction. And like I said before, you get stuck in that loop. But I guess I would try and find more early proof points of products that would make the funding conversations easier. And I would also, and this may not be true for everybody's situation and everybody's company, but certainly for our situation, I was trying to talk to VCs way too early. I shouldn't have burnt time on that. I should have stuck to the angels and kept that sort of drip of funding coming through while I got the proof points. I think we burnt a lot of time. VCs are always happy to talk to you, but you know, they gathering information, and it's not necessarily a good use of your time. So I guess we burnt time on that early on. Yeah, and I guess prepare to be resilient. I think it's an incredibly tough journey early on. The amount of no's you're going to get from investors, but also the disappointments in terms of sales. There's so many times where we were like, yeah, that contract's absolutely nailed on. That's absolutely going to happen. And then, we've had all sorts of things. We've had, somebody had a heart attack, somebody unfortunately got diagnosed with cancer, somebody had a bike accident. These are things that happen in people's lives, and that can, there's nothing you can do about that in terms of a sales journey. But yeah, those kind of the blows are relentless, I think, in terms of the challenges you have to overcome. So it's and I'm not entirely sure how you prepare for that, but I think, yeah, waste less time on the wrong funding conversations and prepare to be very resilient for the journey, because it's going to be tough.
Interesting. I think that's really honest feedback and advice to anybody that's in this journey at the moment. And especially that human element. We talk a lot about being prepared and creating a pipeline and, going out, and it's a numbers game and all the rest of it. And effectively it is, because, it's awful when life gets in the way. It's awful when you're planning your business and you're relying on those clients closing to win, the funds to then go after more companies. But it's also, equally devastating when you hear the stories behind that, which we don't always see in the B2B world. We just feel like, oh, well, that guy's just stopped returning my messages, or they've just ghosted us, or whatever. But it just shows that, you just never know what's happening in the background. And at the end of the day, business is business. And, just having that empathy and understanding that, this is not the end of the world in comparison to what's going on. So we talked a lot about, women, challenges, investors. But in terms of being a founder today, you started when AI was kind of exciting, but people were still hesitant. The industry has changed significantly since COVID. There's been some highs, there's been some lows. If you have any advice to give to new upcoming founders or people that have just started their journey or haven't started yet, coming into the world now, what advice would you give those B2B tech founders?
I guess it's back to the stuff I've said, get a product up and running as soon as you can. It doesn't need to be perfect. There's so many things that we built out after version 1 that, we were sort of crossing our fingers through some of it in the early days, but get something built. Understand your audience really, really clearly. None of this is rocket science. Do your research, make sure both your end consumers and your businesses, you understand them really, really well, so that you put your time and energy into building the things that are going to really make the difference. And then, yeah, just get those proof points, get your product out there as much as you can, get the feedback in, create those really strong relationships with your clients so that you get that really powerful, honest feedback. And then just keep going, just keep iterating, keep improving. Nothing stands still. The tech doesn't stand still. Your competitors don't stand still. Your team doesn't stand still. So, yeah, just find your sources of energy so that you can keep going, because it's one hell of a ride, as they say. And it's like, where do you create your support network and your energy from to keep doing that is important.
Brilliant. And if you go on Rachel's LinkedIn profile, you'll see there's a photo of awards being won. And Inicio are no stranger to receiving awards. I know you've got your trophy cabinet behind you. What does the future look like for Inicio? What do you see is going to happen in the next 12 to 18 months?
So we're continuing to expand the use cases. So as I mentioned, we've moved into that new lending space. And we're coming across other kind of use cases around that as well. So we'll continue to expand out in the UK. And then beyond that, it's looking internationally. We've had some sort of contacts from other jurisdictions where they've got some similar challenges, and our product will work in other areas. So yeah, it's starting to look to where the best opportunities are, where we can support in those areas. So yeah, growth is kind of the number one headline.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, Rachel.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Tech Startup Stories. Have a story you'd like us to share or a topic you'd want to cover? Reach out and we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.